HR tech, work tech, and investment are transforming the future of work. Are you in the know? Welcome to the WorkTech podcast. Join host George LaRocque for expert insights on the trends, M&A activity, and strategies shaping the workplace. Brought to you by oneworktech.com and the Work Defined Network.
Hey everyone, welcome back to WorkTech. Welcome wherever you're watching or listening. Excited to be on the new Work Defined podcast network. And today there's a topic that's really been emerging lately. Interview intelligence has been having a moment as a category. Our ability to have experiences like interviews and then leverage AI to impact the effectiveness of it. And the entire hiring process in this example has really caught the attention of enterprises globally. And one of the tech providers that stands out in that category is Pillar, especially for larger enterprise organizations. So CEO and founder Mark Simpson is here to tell us more about Pillar and the interview intelligence category. Welcome, Mark.
George, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you everyone for listening. I'm excited to spend the next 20, 30 minutes with you.
Yeah, terrific. And I really appreciate you carving time out of your busy schedule for this. So before we dig in on Pillar, why don't you introduce yourself and a quick description of Pillar, if you will.
Yeah, happy to. So again, thank you very much, and thank you everyone. My name is Mark Simpson, as George said. I'm the founder and CEO of Pillar. We are an interview intelligence company. We are founding kind of a new category as we are a company. A little bit about me. I'm not originally from the US. I'm originally from the UK, as you may be able to hear by an accent. I've grown a couple of very successful companies in the past. And have always looked back on those experiences and looked back on working for some very big organizations and felt like, how can I help in my next company? How can I be the most help to companies and the company's growth and expansion as they go forward? And for me, the big thing that stood out, the thing that other CEOs always speak about is like, how do we get the best skills into an organization? So with Pillar, really wanted to dive in, see how we could work alongside talent acquisition professionals and just make their lives easier and help them go through their processes. And in doing so, we've founded this category of interview intelligence. We're designing Pillar to really sit alongside talent acquisition professionals and help them when it gets to the stage where the candidates that they're finding and they're screening through are ready for interviews. And we're here to make that process easier, more efficient, and more effective for them so that we're saving a ton of time and we're reducing turnover in the first year when people are actually hired. And that's been our focus now for the last 4 years or so. We're very, very fortunate to partner with some wonderful organizations now in making that a reality.
Cool. So I love the backstory there. How you've sort of come out of experiencing this as an executive, as a founder, at hiring people. I find that, by the way, this is either good news or bad news for you. Once you get into this market, it's really hard to leave it for some reason. And we've all had that. So we've got you now. So, and I know you're a very active participant in the market, but that being said,
George, sorry to interrupt, but I'm loving it.
Yeah.
So that's only good news now. No,
good news. Okay.
Genuinely loving the people that we're working with. It's great.
Excellent. But on this journey from sort of coming into the market, it's been a few years now. I'm curious if you have any observations about, when you set out into this market, learnings that maybe are different than some of your early assumptions, maybe some interesting observations as a fresh set of eyes on this industry.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. Actually, it's a great question. So I came into looking at the talent acquisition space really from outside of it. And my previous companies, there's been a couple of common themes in the two sort of large successful companies that I've built before. They've both been in B2B software. So founding another company in that was fairly natural. And they both had an extensive amount of machine learning, as it was called back in 2006, but AI, as it was called sort of in my more recent companies, underpinning the platform. So my theory coming in, really, we started Pillar on the cusp of COVID. So COVID happened, and to someone that's been sort of working in machine learning and AI for 16 years or 17 years or so at the time, that came in, and in an instant, we went from interviews, which had been, really black boxes where two people physically went into a room, had a conversation, and one person came out the other side saying they liked them or not, into everything being online, on Zoom or Teams, or what have you. So someone in my position, I came in thinking, okay, fine. Well, now I can see into every single interview conversation, and I can understand how that conversation goes, and maybe I can make some improvements and efficiencies in it. So we set out along that road and that task. And sure enough, some of the assumptions we made played out really well. That yes, there are people that are having kind of conversations that don't focus on skills, and having conversations inconsistently, and all of those elements. I think the one thing that I didn't realize that I've learned, and we've learned as an organization over the last few years, is just how badly talent acquisition teams were served by their applicant tracking systems when it gets to the interview part of the process. And I think applicant tracking systems are sort of fantastic as a system of record, and for helping manage kind of the top of the funnel and getting candidates in and understanding where they're at. But actually, when somebody gets into an interview and understanding what goes on in the interview and guiding those interviews, and then actually helping the process through to selecting a candidate, and selecting the right candidate based on their skills, I've not come across an applicant tracking system that does a good job in that. And an applicant tracking system should be the system of record and should manage and should help all the way through to selecting a candidate. I think that there is a large gap in that final part of the process. So we realized that fairly early on at Pillar, and have been building out filling a platform to fill that enormous gap that is left by ATSs. All the while, syncing and integrating with them to help TA teams. We heard loud and clear, they don't want lots of new systems. They want everything to be integrated. But really just making sure that talent acquisition professionals get the help they need in managing what is actually a really hard part of the process, because they're not just managing themselves and their candidates, they're managing lines of business as part of this as well, and all the different calendaring and everything else that goes alongside it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how, I think I can see some of the outcomes that you help. You mentioned those earlier, retention and so forth, efficiency, speed, and I can understand sort of where it all fits. How can you get into the how it really works? What the product is really doing from that. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And George, if it helps, I'm happy to share a couple of slides here with you in just a few of the things that we do to maybe bring it to life. There's
Perfect.
A limited amount I can do in a quick podcast, but maybe we can bring it to life a little bit.
Right.
So if I just kind of click through on a couple of slides that we have. So Pillar gets involved with helping talent acquisition professionals really from as early as the intake meeting, where we can use AI to create job descriptions and make sure those job descriptions are kind of fair before they get put out to the market. But from an interview standpoint, take any job descriptions you have or have created and start turning them into interview guides. Like literally within seconds, you can get kind of the skills, good questions, or what have you, and build out interview guides. And we have a sort of what I call a wizard that kind of can take you through an intake meeting from zero to having a fully fledged sort of set of interview guides for all the interview steps you have in minutes. So we start out there in helping underpin and manage the interview process. With those interview guides, we will then make sure those guides get used, because we've heard for a number of years that enterprises are creating interview guides in Word documents, what have you, and there's always been a question mark as to, are they actually used or not? So we then serve those up into Zoom or into Teams or, into the interviews that are happening, whether they're on the phone or what have you. Just making sure that people are following those guides and then giving them a scorecard in the interview with different rating scales or reactions or what have you, and the ability to make comments so that we're not just serving the guides in there, but we're also collecting feedback live within the interview itself. So talent acquisition professionals know what's going on and they know that there is data to then make a decision off as you go through the process. From there, that can all happen actually without the interview being recorded. But the vast majority of our customers will also, we will sync with Teams or Zoom, and we will record it in the interviews as well. And with those recordings, we will automatically write them up. So now, if you're a recruiter doing screenings, for example, and you're doing 5 or 8 screenings a day or whatever you're doing, you don't need to spend 10 minutes after each one doing a write-up. We'll just do that for you. And we can do that in any way in which you like your interview write-up. So we've created guides. We've got collected feedback and are filling out scorecards, and we can add to those with, interview write-ups and summaries as well. So now you've got talent acquisition teams with a complete sort of set of information around every single interview that's happened, from recruiter screening right the way through to hiring manager interviews and the interview team. With that, we then help throughout the process and collect all that data for each stage of those interviews. And then we'll help in the actual decisioning meeting as well. Decisioning meeting meaning who should be selected to be hired and join the team or join the company. And we have a platform that's built out that talent acquisition teams will use with their hiring team or interviewing team, just to be able to go back and understand candidate skills and which skills sort of stand out, or which candidates stand out as having the right skills for the role. And what this has moved from is it's moved those debrief meetings from, the team getting together and everyone looking at 3-week-old notes and really remembering whether they liked a candidate or not, to, focusing the discussion around skills and who has the right skills for the role and making sure the right people get into those organizations. So that's what I mean by really sort of sitting alongside talent acquisition teams, just giving them the tools to empower the right hiring decisions from there. So just a few examples. I mean, I can get into examples of, we also help train, individuals to run better interviews. We have a AI that goes through interviews and just understands potential bias and moments of coaching from it. We understand kind of the candidate experiences it goes through as well. So we can understand, which interviews maybe need some help and coaching, which are providing a good candidate experience and which ones maybe don't as much. So a lot of different elements that kind of go into the platform just to make it sort of that sort of real assistant to talent acquisition teams on where to focus and how to hire the right people in the best way.
Okay. And this is all integrated with the ATS or any platform that's being used. That's right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right, George. And we heard loud and clear from CHROs and their teams that they don't want 100 different systems that they're logging into every day. And obviously we are a newer technology. We haven't been around 20 years like an applicant tracking system has. So quite often new technologies are completely separate systems that you have to go into, and they work as a bit of a side to what you use day to day. We actually designed from the ground up a slightly different approach. So we will, as part of our onboarding, we will integrate with your applicant tracking system. So we're pulling data out of it, but we're also pushing all the data back into it as well. So you still have one system of record, and you can just refer back to your applicant tracking system if you wish. And then we'll integrate with your video conferencing and phones and what have you, in order to make sure that we link everything together. So we can really run in the background and surface all of the great insights that we have to you, but can do it in the platforms that you use today.
Yeah. One of the key facets of, as we've defined it, this shift to WorkTech there are two really that jump out at me here that you're spot on. There are more. You're really aligned quite well overall. But first is being designed without ego. So, in the previous iterations of B2B tech, and especially in this space, it was all about, get the eyeballs on the interface and don't let them go. So everybody's competing for attention of all the constituencies, the back office user, the candidate, the employee, et cetera. Sounds like you're really putting this into the flow of work, whether it's on the talent acquisition team or the candidate side or the hiring team. You're aware that you're in the systems of work and the systems of collaboration, Teams, Slack, etc., whatever they're using to have this meeting. That's key. The other is, I guess three really that are primary: experience, so designed for the employee, for the candidate, for the user. It's not, it seems like for decades we made trade-offs. Was this designed for the candidate or employee or talent acquisition or HR? And we can do both. And it seems like you've achieved that. And then the data, right? Data is key. And that's really in this new wave where most of the value comes from, right? That's where the gold is in helping support decisions. So I really like what you've shown us there, and the direction that you've taken. So I want to step back for a second. Thinking of interview intelligence. It's quite obvious that this isn't just a digital interview platform. That's you are facilitating that, but there's a lot more to it. But how would you advise users, customers to think about interview intelligence versus the more traditional digital interview experiences that have been on the market?
Yeah. Firstly, look, thank you for the observations around the design and data. Our design team here gets so many props from our customers, but it's really good to sort of see that. It's something that we worked so hard on from day one, to just get the user experience right, make it easy to use, because that's one area where I feel that applicant tracking systems could be much more successful if they were designed well, and actually they probably would have got more usage by lines of business if they were designed well with that in mind. And for me, that's been an area in HR tech that's been sort of underthought of for years. And absolutely, the data now is key to everything, and it's amazing what data gets pulled out and how we can use that data. We differ a little bit. To come back to your question, there's a number of areas where we are very differentiated from what has happened over in kind of interviewing and digital interviewing over the years. So you'll notice one thing that we focus on and the sole thing we focus on is live interviews. We don't look at and touch on the more asynchronous side of interviews, sending out questions and having the candidates record themselves and send those back in. I actually think there are fantastic companies in the market that do that. Some companies that we partner with that just sort of solve that problem in the market. That's not the problem that we're looking to solve, and not the market we're looking to serve. And then of the few companies that have sort of ventured into this space, sort of more historically, there really haven't been that many on the live interview side. But those that haven't got very far, because you're forcing a candidate and you're forcing the user to use their own platform rather than fitting in the workflow and having that great sort of user experience, as you point out. So they've kind of ventured in it, but never been successful, never got the adoption that we're seeing within a customer. So we go into a customer now, and because this new category of interview intelligence, because Pillar, we've focused on developing it not just for talent acquisition teams, but also for hiring managers to get value out of this. That sort of side-by-side skills comparison when you're making a decision is wonderful for a hiring manager, because they're able to see snippets of interviews and understand who has skills and what have you. So they get a lot of value out of Pillar as well, not just talent acquisition teams. And the most pleasing thing I heard, it was probably 12 months or so ago, actually, when I spoke to a customer. They said to me, Mark, look, we love your platform. What it didn't realize when we bought it was that it would just spread like wildfire within our lines of business. We didn't have to do anything because hiring managers were telling their teams they had to use it because of the value they got out of it. And that to me is probably, over the 4 years that I've been doing this, one of the most pleasing comments that I've heard from a customer, in that we've done something right, that people want to use it and it spreads through a business, rather than being that piece of tech that gets fought against or doesn't get used because it's just a bit it doesn't fit within the current processes.
Yep. So that makes a lot of sense. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk. I'm curious how it's all going for you. The business itself. What kind of traction are you seeing, and how would you characterize that? Whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I think when you're starting a business and starting a category, in the early days, it's all about getting the message out there and having an understanding from the audience and the market of what we're doing. And I would say, in the first sort of a couple of years or so, I was getting a lot of people say, "What is this? Why do we need it? What does it do?" And those sorts of questions. Obviously, we've been through quite a tumultuous market over in 2023. I think everyone listening to this will relate to teams downsizing and just a bit of a struggle in the general sort of talent acquisition space. We actually grew through 2023. We're one of the few companies who grew, but really, as we started, as soon actually as we started in January this year, it has been an amazing year for us, a really sort of wonderful year where it feels like, or the feedback that we've seen and the revenue that we're experiencing has, the market's really landed. It's really taken off. And look, at the back end of last year, Gartner sort of put out research about interview intelligence, recognized us as a category, recognized us not just on their hype cycle, but actually sort of in some detailed writing. We've had fantastic reports from Madeline Lorano, who's done a piece on the space and research in the space, which got released recently. And now when I speak to TA professionals and CHROs, I'm getting the conversations. We know we need to get to this. It's all about timing, not what is it you do. So I think when teams have historically, maybe through 2022, 2023, looked at us because they want to be best in class. Now we're still getting some of that best in class, but it's quite normally shifting now into, yes, we know we need to do this as part of our TA stack. So we've been very fortunate in sort of leading this space, and we've been growing fantastically through the course of the last couple of years.
Oh, good. That's great to hear. I think in this HR tech, WorkTech space, we always used to say we're so far behind the B2B market, and that, in some areas that may be true, but I feel like there's parity here with other B2B tech that companies are using in customer success and sales, marketing, research, where there's a capture of that experience, of that data that's then leveraged largely via AI to then make business decisions, improve on our skills in those different departments, or bring insights that weren't readily available before. So this feels I've seen a few of these recently where I feel like we're at par with some other areas in B2B tech. So kudos to you for that. And I can see you talked about AI. We don't have to, you're clearly leveraging AI through the whole platform. So have you raised money? Are you, what's your journey on fundraising and capital? I think you've largely bootstrapped the business. I mean, well, that sounds smaller than it is. You've been a successful entrepreneur, and you've basically, I'll say, funded the business yourself. That's probably a better way to put it.
Yeah, George, look, I've been very, very fortunate in a couple of companies that we've built over the last sort of 15, 16 years. That's led us to be able to fund the company ourselves over the early parts of our growth. We did raise a round of financing last year. We didn't need to, but we thought it was the right thing to do to fund some of the expansion that has come this year. And with the expansion that we've had through the course of this year, Pillar's in a really solid place because of it. So we're fortunate to not need tons of money, but when we as and when we do go through and expand and accelerate the business, we're in a very good place to do so. So yeah, it's been a journey, but actually through what has been quite a rocky period in investment terms, we've come out the other side very, very nicely.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like also from a go-to-market side, it's, you've been able to rudder through a lot of market hesitancy and sort of turmoil, growing and in a enviable position from a capital perspective. So that's great to hear. We say a lot of folks ask me how the market's doing, and I tell not everybody's experiencing the market in the same way. Depending on the category, depending on who their ideal customer profile is, where they're focused. So it's good to have a good story to tell these days. It has been a slog for most. So where can folks...
Don't get me wrong, it's been a slog for us as well. Certainly feel that there are a lot of elements where you look at it, and it's been a lot of hard work, but genuinely where we sit now, we're very, very happy with the progress we're making.
Good. So where can folks go to find out more about Pillar and the product?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the best place is our website, pillar.hr, and through LinkedIn, and we're very active on LinkedIn and various other channels as well. What I did put together, George, for your listeners was actually the ability to try Pillar for free. We have an intake coming up late October, beginning of November, where we have the ability to take on some customers to try Pillar for free for a period of time. And what I'll do is I can link that in the show notes for this. Or people can go on and just sort of share, sort of see the QR code, which I'm sharing now, and scan that and register to sign up for that program. And we thought we'd do it for your listeners, George. You pitched your listeners were amazing, so we thought we'd give them something back for getting this far into listening to me speak. So there you go.
Excellent. So anybody that's watching, you've got the QR code. Anyone listening, wherever you hear podcasts, you'll want to go to worktech.com, and you'll find this recording and the QR code, and it'll be in the show notes. So we'll try to have it everywhere you might look for the QR code. Thank you, Mark. That's exciting. I'm happy to deliver that to the WorkTech audience. And let's see. Well, I could keep going and dig in deeper on the product, but we're out of time. And I really do appreciate your time. I know how busy you are, and thank you so much, Mark, for being here.
George, look, that was a lot of fun. I really hope the listeners got a lot out of that as well. Thank you so much for having me on your show, and thank you everyone for listening too. So that was great.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks everyone at WorkTech and on the Work Defined network. Thank you.